want great weed control in your soybeans, and I don't care if we're talking Roundup beans, Liberty, or conventional, your best bet is to start with a great pre-program because we don't have very many good post-emerge options, and I would even throw Roundup and Liberty in that. We can't kill everything. If it gets big, we've got to start good, and if you've got a lot of weeds on your farm, especially a lot of these Roundup resistant weeds, start with the 3 pre. We want to explain that today.
All right, so when we think about these 3 different sites of action pre-emerge, we're trying to take every shot we can on some of these tough to kill resistant weeds. We're mainly looking at broadleaf weeds, but don't underestimate how important good grass control is as well. That's certainly going to help you out in terms of yield rather than letting the grass get up and start pulling away water and nutrients from your crop. So first of all, we've got the DNAs. We've got your Treflan, Sonalan, or Prowl option. Now these are a lot of times known as the yellows because they are yellow. And when we think about Treflan and Sonalan, they have to be instantly incorporated if you want to get the maximum out of those products. Then when it comes to Prowl, if you're in no-till or you just want to do a one-pass, real light tillage, Prowl would be a great product for you. We use a lot of Prowl on the farm here. Because we're in some minimum till situations or strip till situations, Prowl can work nicely.
Treflan has the most carryover. That's why it's the cheapest. We usually don't talk about applying the full rate, the full 2-pint rate. Yes, it would be better for broadleaves, all right? It'd be better for lamb's quarters. It'd be better for palmer pigweed and water hemp, but we worry about carryover into corn or wheat. So if you're down south, you can probably get by with that. In the northern U.S., we would never recommend 2 pints of Treflan. Use 1.5 pints. Now, if you want to use a full rate, switch to Sonalan or Prowl. There you can use the full rate, and you don't have quite the carryover that you do with Treflan.
Okay, let's move on to these other sites of action. And the first one I want to talk about is just wildly popular. It's the PPOs. It's products like Authority and Valor. It seems like in soybeans, if I talk to any farmer, just about any part of the country, and they're going to use a pre for soybeans, I say, what are you going to use? They'll typically say one of the Authority products or one of the Valor products. There is another product in that chemical family, Sharpen. We don't talk a lot about Sharpen when it comes to soybean weed control because you're limited. You can only use about 1 ounce safely in front of soybeans. So why do that? If you can't use a full rate of the product and get the full residual out of it, but Authority and Valor, you can use at high rates and get good weed control. And the other thing with those products is you have a lot of choices because there are a lot of different premixes that contain those products that you might use.
But I want to come back to just the straight PPO. That's what my preference is. So straight Authority versus straight Valor, let's just look at those 2 things individually. Some people will say, oh, Authority is a better product. Well, if you're comparing the low rate of Valor to the high rate of Authority, then yeah, Authority is a better product. Now Authority has a very long residual, Valor has a lot less residual, and you can rotate to just about any crop the next year. So they are a little bit different in that respect, but both of them have very good activity on palmer pigweed and water hemp and lamb's quarters and a lot of these tough weeds, especially the small-seeded broadleaves that we're dealing with today.
Okay, the other site of action that we like to talk about pre-emerge is metribuzin. It is in that triazine family, so it's a relative to things like atrazine, but metribuzin is safe to use in soybeans. Now there are a couple of cautions that we have with metribuzin. If you have very high soil pH, if you're above 7.4, for example, we start to reduce the amount of metribuzin that we use, or really the amount of metribuzin we need, because metribuzin is very highly active once you get up into higher soil pHs.
Also, if you have very sandy soils, you might have to avoid the use of metribuzin. Otherwise, again, cut that rate way back. I mean, it's a little bit trial and error for you, but again, if you don't use 3 pre's, you're in really tough shape with a lot of these Roundup resistant weeds. So I don't care what other practices you're using, you're probably going to want to go with this if you've had some big issues on your farm in the past. And when we talk about conventional beans, I tell guys all the time, look, if you're even thinking about planting conventionals, if you don't do 3 pre's, forget about it entirely. I absolutely wouldn't do it because post-emerge, we've got nothing good. And people forget because we've had such great weed control for so many years, they forget how important weed control is. If you don't believe weed control is important, go back to your yield monitor this fall and look at wherever you had weeds and look at the 20 bushel yield loss you had in soybeans. It's enormous. You've got to have great weed control, and in soybeans, that starts with the 3 pre program.
All right, 3 pre's are really important, but will they stop our weed of the week? We'll talk about that coming up next.